Om Namaste. Welcome today to the Advaita channel. I'm going to be reading from the Song of Ribhu. I picked up previously reading from the essence of the Ribhu because I didn't have my full copy. This is the edition that I'm going to read from today. This is from the original Tamil version. This is a book most beloved, most close to my heart, which I began to read quite intensively at Muji's ashram in Portugal. Only this year, but so close to me. Let's begin. If there's any problems with the audio, please let me know. Namaste Atma. I'm just going to begin with a little of the introduction, just a couple of excerpts, because this book was particularly close to the heart of Ramana Maharishi. Introduction to the spiritual knowledge of the Tamil Ribhu Gita, the Song of Ribhu. Truth transcends all thoughts, speech, and the printed word. It transcends all ideas and even silence. It is inconceivable, yet it alone is. As it is the very being of all, it is known as the Self. There are none who know it, and there are none who do not know it. There is nothing that is it, yet nothing that is not it. Those who seek to realize it find it abiding within themselves as the one self, free of a separate realizer, any notion of an object realized, and all dualism. The realization of the self, by which is meant the absolute reality, is a matter of self-knowledge. For those who recognize the vital importance of self-realization, this text was composed in ancient times. It was intended and remains as a sign pointing to the truth of the self, as an explanation of what the self, the absolute, truly is, and as an aid to meditation for those who look to their own being or consciousness to awaken from the dream of illusion to the ever-existent reality. This timeless scripture of non-dual truth, known as the Song of Ribhu, is the instruction given by the sage Ribhu to his disciple Nidaga in the process of aiding Nidaga to become enlightened unto his true nature. It is a translation of the Tamil language version of the text, which in turn is a translation, or perhaps better described as a recension, of the Sanskrit Ribhu Gita. A complete English translation of which was published by the Society of Abidance of Truth in 1995. The Ribhu Gita was one of the first books read by Sri Ramana Maharishi after his self-realization. one whose message clearly accorded with what he had realized within himself. It could be said that it influenced the way in which he revealed self-knowledge to those who sought his instruction. And most certainly, he frequently referenced it and recommended it to others, as is demonstrated in the introduction to the English version. And now I'd like to begin the first chapter. Chapter 1. History of the treatise. Definition of the self. One's own experience. Obeisance to the Supreme Shiva. To that Supreme Shiva, the auspicious, the absolute, who is unreservedly worshipped in the hearts of the five-faced Lord, Ganesha, Lord of Shiva's retinue, the elephant-headed Lord, the six-faced Lord, Skanda, the attacker, the gracious Mother, and their endless retinue, along with innumerable seers, gods, and other loving devotees. For attaining any result, and for having bestowed upon them the fulfillment of their desires, who is undivided like the expanse of the sky, who is an ocean of compassion, and who is the space of consciousness. Let us bow. Natesa. Obeisance to Natesa, the Lord of the Dance. We ever cherish in our hearts this pure ethereal consciousness, which, in conjunction with its free Shakti, supreme power, emanates as the supreme truth. In its compassion for the welfare of its devotees, and which is in a constant state of joyous dance, that enables all to realize the wonder of the experience of non-dual bliss. May we have the protection of that form, the left side of which is the mother of the entire universe that exists, the right side of which is the father of the entire universe that exists. The sound from the anklets of the feet of which is the origin of any kind of knowledge, and by the three eyes of which everything manifests itself. Obeisance to Shiva and others. Glory to the feet of the infinite Shiva, who is the Lord of the entire sentient and insentient world, and the embodiment of limitless power. Glory to the feet of the Devi, the goddess, who is the mother of the entire phenomenal world, and who is the very embodiment of eternal bliss. Glory to the feet of Vinayaka, the remover, who clears away all kind of obstacles and is beneficent to all. Glory to the feet of the Shammukha, the six-faced one, who bestows the knowledge of Shiva on deserving devotees. History of the treatise. The Supreme Lord, who brought forth all this world, created at the outset, for the welfare of the people of the world, the Vedas, which explain various forms of rites, karma, meditation, upasana, and knowledge, jnana, and brought forth besides the smritis, the recollected traditional works, the Puranas, legendary lore, the Itihasas, the epics, and other treatises, to enable proper understanding of the extreme subtlety of the Vedas. Of the Puranas and the Itihasas, which describe the changeless principle of non-duality, the principal purport of the Vedas, which tower above all, an epic rarest of the rare, by name Shiva Rahasya, the secret of Shiva, the mystery of Shiva, is preeminent. This epic, consisting of 12 parts, is extremely holy. In days of yore, the Supreme Shiva taught this extolled epic to the Supreme Mother. The Mother, the embodiment of grace, taught this to six-faced Skanda, the son of the spotless Shiva, enquiring thus: Grace incarnate, Son of the Supreme Lord, who is the embodiment of grace, succor for those who seek refuge in you. All-knowing crown jewel, Lord of six faces of auspicious look, by your grace I heard the 5 parts clearly. Now further tell me part 6 in your nectarine words, and save me. Quenching all the scorching heat of worldly existence. Thus implored, Skanda said, Jaikishavya, endowed with all desirable and superb qualities, we are pleased by your steadfast devotion. We shall expound to you, for the good of all, the ocean of knowledge of non-duality, which was previously personally taught to the spotless sage Ribhu on the peerless Mount Kailasha, by the suzerain of the sentient and the insentient world, the Supreme Lord himself, for the welfare of the world. Once upon a time, the sage Ribhu, endowed with all good qualities, like Sama, tranquility, and others, saw on Mount Kailasha my father, all immaculate, who sweeps away all sorrow, and, prostrating to him, began praising that Sambhu, bestower of happiness, with great humility and love. To get his lasting grace, and to obtain the blissful, undivided, supreme knowledge. After praising him, Ribhu addressed the Supreme Shiva thus: Excellent and perfect Guru, out of your compassion, be gracious enough to instruct me now in the knowledge of pure non-duality, which will lift this sense of duality that clouds my vision today, and thereby also enable all to attain their highest good. So be it, said Shankara, the beneficent one. Shankara spoke thus: Sage Ribhu, offspring of Brahma, the Creator, by an enquiry into this epitome of aphoristic formulas offered by me in 4 parts, which are the nature of explaining clearly the entire meaning of Vedanta, there will arise the fearless, undivided, supreme knowledge, which leads to the elimination of the miseries of a mundane existence, and to the bliss of the Supreme Brahman. With no delusions, hear this in full. So spoke the great Lord to Ribhu. As he spoke thus, sage Ribhu, hearing the subtle meanings of the sacred formulas, and reflecting on them fully and incessantly in his mind, further meditated on them. Rid of worldly sorrows by the knowledge thus gained, and embracing exquisite bliss, Ribhu began praising the sacred form of Shiva with wonder and love. Glory to Shiva, the embodiment of grace that protects me. Glory to Shiva, the mass of bliss. Glory to Shiva, totally devoid of attributes. Glory to Shiva, beneficent to all. Glory to the Supreme Shiva, the spotless. Glory to the Supreme Shiva, the all-pervasive. Glory to the Supreme Shiva, the one and non-dual. Glory to the Supreme Shiva, who is omnipresent and undivided. Glory to Shiva, the cause of the entire phenomenal world. Glory to Shiva, the Lord of Ambika, the Mother. Glory to Shiva, who is all and complete. Glory to Shiva, the limbless, the partless. Glory to Shiva, who exists everywhere, undifferentiated. Glory to Shiva, who is to be comprehended through Vedanta, the final, highest knowledge. Glory to Shiva, the Lord of all these worlds. Glory to Shiva, the mass of truth, consciousness, bliss. Prostrations to your feet, Shankara, beneficent one, the substratum of all that is moving and unmoving, and the embodiment of truth. Prostrations to your feet, Supreme Shankara, the brilliant blaze that illumines both the higher and the lower. Prostrations to your feet, sweet blemishless form, that bestows happiness upon all beings, everywhere. Prostrations to your feet, to which Hari, Brahma, and millions of the divine milieu offer obeisance. I bow to your feet, which remove all the anguish of earthly existence, of your devotees, and give them happiness. I bow to your feet that give with ease this pure supreme knowledge and remove all weariness. I bow to your feet that transcend the mind and stand as the symbol of ethereal consciousness. I bow to your feet, O Guru, who clarifies all the wonderful knowledge of Vedanta. Thus praising the Supreme Shiva, and then, at his bidding, departing therefrom with humility, wandering here and there, strengthened by the unbroken blissful experience, and after initiating some deserving devotees on the way, he, Ribhu, reached, due to diverse circumstances, the earth, and came to the exalted holy centre of Kedara. The sages saw Ribhu, the son of Brahma, steeped in dispassion, the repository of intense devotion to and knowledge of Shiva. He was decked with all the Shivite insignia, like vibhuti, ashes, rudraksha, seeds of holy berries, necklaces, and other such things. He was staying at the shrine of Kedara, atop a Himalayan peak, offering worship to that perfect, full Lord of Kedara. On seeing him, the spotless sages, such as Nidaga, Sukha, and others, lovingly, fully prostrated before him, and praising him, addressed the worthy sage Ribhu thus: "Once upon a time, did you not duly worship with devotion the supreme Shiva on Mount Kailasha, and obtain for the good of all, for the welfare of the world, the infinite, indivisible knowledge by the grace of that Lord of the universe?" Enlightened Guru, who has attained the unwavering, undivided, supreme knowledge, in your intense compassion, be gracious enough to guide us to attain the great liberation, which will remove the debilitating miseries of worldly existence. In the way in which you attained, by the compassion of the Supreme Shiva, the undivided, supreme knowledge of the essence of the faultless formulas of the crest of the Vedas. Our guide, with the help of the boat of divine knowledge that can be obtained through your kindness, we shall cross the vile ocean of recurring births and deaths, and reach the shore of the immaculate Supreme Brahman, thus attaining eternal existence. When the sages thus supplicated, with deference, the spotless sage Ribhu, he, full of joy, responded, "There is no secret kept from any of you. Pure elite of sages, who with your worship and devotion are all entitled to the grace of the Supreme Shiva. Is there anything, anywhere, to be kept back from the devotees of Shiva? Therefore, even today, I shall expound to you this great knowledge. Hear then, as I tell you, of the knowledge that is the essence of the aphorisms of the crest jewel of the faithless, faultless, Vedas. Justice, as it was told to me without reserve, by the Supreme Shiva in his compassion. Spotless sages, by this knowledge, all of you will ever live changelessly, free of the great distress of earthly existence and its bondages, and attain the full nature of the Supreme Brahman. Thus, generally addressing Nidaga, Sukha, and other sages, with Nidaga as the foremost, and lovingly bowing, to Mahadeva, Shiva, the great God, with the three instruments of action, body, speech, and mind. The gracious great sage Ribhu began clearly imparting to them the undivided supreme knowledge of Shiva, which frees one from bondage. The spouse of Uma, the supreme Shiva, who is the full, infinite expanse of consciousness, is both the material and instrumental cause of the creation of the earth and other worlds, the one who combines the worlds, gives them a reality and illumines them, and suffuses with joy those sapless entities, is also Sambhu, bestower of happiness, the mass of truth, consciousness, bliss. As the supreme Shiva, of the very nature of grace, is established as the support of all endless power, there is nothing equal or superior to that Lord Ishvara, the cause of all the world. So, he is proclaimed as the instrumental and material cause. There is no other cause greater than that Lord Ishvara at any time, anywhere. May that blemishless reality, the mass of consciousness bliss, emerging as the divine auspicious form, by its supreme power, which is filled with consciousness, given to its sports, such as the destruction of the Tripururas, the three cities or triad of bodies, removing all difficulties for its devotees, and granting them beneficent enjoyment and liberation. May that reality, the Supreme Lord, protect us all by its grace forever. Defining the self, Atma. Nidarga, you who possess all attainments. So that all may understand, I shall now briefly tell you the ascertainment of self, as expounded by the Supreme Ishvara, the Lord of all the world, in his intense compassion. Those who listen and learn faultlessly well, this teaching that is extremely secret, will forever attain the nature of the Supreme Brahman. The self is knowledge, one and complete. It is this knowledge that remains in the practical world as the base for the body and endless conditioning factors. That is the witness of the body and all else. And that is beyond all objects of perception. Indeed, if one inquires in an unbiased manner, this self, indeed, is of the nature of the indivisible Supreme Brahman. Because it is imperishable, it is the Self, indeed, existing as the nature of knowledge, that is the truth. Because it illumines all, it is the Self, indeed, existing as the nature of knowledge, that is consciousness. Because it is beloved by all, it is the Self, indeed, existing as the nature of knowledge, that is bliss. Because it has no limitations, it is the Self, indeed, existing as the nature of knowledge, that is the infinite. Brahman, indeed, is of the nature of the knowledge of the non-dual. It is the base of everything. It is beyond all duality and stands forth as the one whole, eternal, attributeless, unsullied, stainless. Its nature is of non-action, ever peaceful, and the mass of truth, consciousness, bliss. It is ever the Self of all. Just as the one expanse of space, being conditioned by the pot and by the outside, is considered by the world as two spaces, pot space and outside space. The one reality, which is of the nature of the one knowledge, because of conditioning by unreal ignorance and others, appears in a dual aspect as Self and Brahman. Just as the pot space and the outside space are one indeed, when conditionings like the pot are negated, so also if the conditionings like nescience and others are negated. The pure Self and the Supreme Brahman are one. All the aspirants for liberation should unimpededly realize the great identity of the Self and the Supreme by Vedantic inquiry, eliminating, through a process of negation, all conditionings that produce a sense of duality. As all differences are an illusory appearance, on Brahman, which is not different from the Self, due to conditionings of the Self, like the defect of nescience, and conditionings of Brahman, like Maya, illusion, delusion. One should realize, by a process of negation, that all appearances are not a whit different from the substratum and one should cognize the originless, endless, undivided identity of the Self and Brahman. Just as the imagined superimposition of silver on the mother of pearl is nothing apart from that mother of pearl, likewise, all this multiplicity, like movement, is but a deceptive superimposition on the Self, the mass of truth consciousness bliss, and is nothing apart from the Self. Thus, discarding these superimpositions through a process of negation, one should realize the full non-dual identity of the Self and the Supreme. Whatever seems superimposed on the Self is never different from the Self. Brahman is not different from the Self. There is no Self different from Brahman. The Self indeed is Brahman. Brahman indeed is the Self. There is not an iota of doubt concerning this. One should always realize the identity of the Self and the Supreme. That I, the Self, am Brahman. As only the Self of the nature of knowledge exists, there is nothing to be referred by the word non-self, as only the Self of the nature of knowledge exists. There can be no thought of non-self, as only the Self of the nature of knowledge exists. There is no world existing as non-self. Be certain that it is only the Self of the nature of knowledge that exists immutably, ever, everywhere. As only the Self of the nature of knowledge exists, there is no nescience or delusion separate from it. As only the Self of the nature of knowledge exists, there is no sankalpa, no concept, volition, or vikalpa, indecision, differentiation, separate from it. As only the Self of the nature of knowledge exists, there is not a trace of any nature separate from it. Be certain that it is only the self of the nature of knowledge that exists immutably ever, everywhere. As there is no entity like the mind, and such, there is never an object of which to think. As truly there is no body, and such, there is never any senility or death. As there are no limbs like hands, there is no activity like taking and giving and such. Be certain that it is only the self, eternally of the nature of knowledge, that exists changelessly. As there is no creator, Brahma, said to be the cause of the spreading universe, there are no worlds with picturesque variety. As there are no series of worlds, there is no Hari who governs the changing universe. As there are no creations, movable or immovable, there is no Hara, the destroyer of the universe. Be certain that it is only the self, the ever perfect fullness that exists changelessly. Om Shanti 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 Om. Prostrations at the feet of all our beloved masters. Ribhu, Ramana, Papaji, Muji, Ananta. Blessed we are.